The shimmering vessel of Earth's delegation hovered above the grand spires of Sunspire Academy, a towering institution of knowledge on the lush world of Illydros. It was unlike any place the human students had ever seen, an alien landscape that stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with floating gardens, vast crystal libraries, and halls that seemed to defy physics with their strange, shifting architecture. Though they were just a small group among thousands of students from every corner of the galaxy, today they would be the center of attention. As the docking bay opened with a hiss, the humans stepped onto the gleaming surface of the academy. The moment they did, every pair of eyes in the bustling plaza seemed to turn toward them. A mix of shock, curiosity, and mild amusement rippled through the crowd of alien students. The humans, with their unassuming clothes and ordinary appearances, seemed so fragile. The towering forms of the insectoid Zyke, the ethereal beings from the Roqui sector, and the muscular, armored Malak all stared down at them, some openly confused. In the distance, a soft hum of communication filled the air as the various species talked to one another in their native tongues. But one thing was clear: no one had ever seen humans before, and they certainly didn't expect much from these newcomers. Leading the group was Maya, a sharp-witted, confident student who stood at the front of the group. She waved casually at the crowd, an easy smile on her face, though inside she couldn't help but feel the pressure. What had she gotten herself into? Being the first human to attend Sunspire Academy was a heavy responsibility. Still, there was no turning back now. Behind her, her friends John, Sarah, and David adjusted their bags and made sure they kept in line. None of them were used to being under the gaze of so many different species. John caught a glimpse of a Zoic student's 6 gleaming eyes staring down at him, their mandibles clicking, and suppressed the urge to shrink back. He wasn't sure if it was their massive size or the fact that their very presence made the air feel thicker, but he couldn't deny that he felt out of place. Al, always the optimist, nudged him with her elbow. "Relax, John. We've faced worse back home, right?" Her wide grin did little to ease his nerves, but he nodded anyway. As they walked through the main plaza toward the Academy's central courtyard, Mia couldn't help but notice the stares that followed them. Some were filled with mild amusement, others with open curiosity, and a few with skepticism. They had been briefed by Earth's diplomatic envoy on how to present themselves. Humans weren't the strongest in the galaxy, nor the fastest or most durable. But they were adaptable, clever, and determined. Yet even as they prepared to showcase these strengths, Mia knew that their biggest challenge wasn't going to be the academic tests or the endless research assignments. It would be earning the respect of a galaxy full of beings who were far more advanced than their species. Humanity had always been at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy, seen as primitive, as soft. Would the aliens ever see them as equals, or were they doomed to remain the underdogs forever? Their first class was set to begin soon, and the humans were herded into one of the Academy's massive lecture halls. Inside, the students found themselves surrounded by dozens of alien species from all corners of the universe. The amphitheater was designed for interspecies interaction, with holographic translators hovering above each seat to ensure that communication was possible for all races present. The energy was electric, buzzing with anticipation as students took their seats. A towering figure approached the front of the room, a Malak professor with armored plating that shimmered in the soft lighting. He was one of the Academy's most respected instructors, a warrior philosopher known for his strict yet fair teaching style. He spoke, his voice boomed through the translator, sending a ripple of unease through the human students. "Welcome, Earthlings," he began, his tone calculated. "You have been invited here for one reason only, to prove that your species is worthy of the privilege of learning among the galaxy's best." Mia's heart raced. She knew this wasn't just about academics, it was a test of humanity's very worth. The professor continued, outlining the year's assignments and competitions, each more demanding than the last. But the one that caught Mia's attention was the culinary gauntlet. It was a competition where students would be challenged to consume the rarest and most dangerous foods from around the galaxy. To most species, it was a rite of passage, one that tested not just physical endurance, but mental fortitude. The humans exchanged uncertain glances. They knew they weren't the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest. But they'd learned to adapt to the environments of Earth, to the dangers of their own planet, to survive against the odds. Could their adaptability be enough to impress these alien students? Could they prove themselves here? "We shall see," Mia muttered under her breath, her eyes scanning the alien faces around her. Each student carried a look of quiet confidence, or perhaps quiet judgment. The humans had a long road ahead of them. They weren't just trying to fit in. They were trying to prove that humanity belonged in the stars. And the gauntlet, Maya thought with a sudden surge of determination, might be just the test they needed. The grand hall of the Sunspire Academy gleamed with 1,000 lights as the humans stood at the entrance, looking upon the strange and luxurious setup of the Academy's famed culinary gauntlet. Unlike any food competition they had ever seen back on Earth, this contest was more than just a test of taste. It was a test of survival. Here, species from across the galaxy competed to demonstrate their ability to withstand the most hazardous and bizarre foods known to exist. Mia glanced around the room nervously as various alien students, many towering above her and cloaked in colorful robes or glistening exoskeletons, mingled with casual arrogance. They eyed the humans as though their presence was both a curiosity and a challenge. Mia knew this was the perfect moment to show humanity's worth, to prove that Earthlings could thrive in environments far beyond their own. A shimmering holographic projection appeared before the students, displaying the rules of the competition in 1,000 different languages. One phrase stood out above the rest. To survive, one must not only consume, but conquer. The humans exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah, the most outgoing of the group, cracked a smile. "Guess we're about to conquer some weird food," she said, her voice light, though her fingers drummed nervously on her seat. A Malak instructor, clad in sharp, metallic armor, stepped forward. His deep voice resonated through the hall, his presence commanding immediate attention. "The competition is simple. Each student will partake in a series of meals that represent the deadliest foods in the galaxy. You will not only have to consume them, but also demonstrate that your species can endure the physical toll they exact. Fail, and you will be disqualified." The human students exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't a test of cooking skills. It was a matter of life and death. The Academy had promised that the meals would be prepared with safety measures in place, but Mia wasn't sure how far those assurances extended. Alien foods could be far more dangerous than anything they'd encountered back home, and Earth's species had barely scratched the surface of intergalactic astronomy. The first dish to be presented was the serpian fruit, a glowing venomous orb grown on a distant moon known for its potent toxins. The fruit's skin shimmered as if alive, and its mere presence caused a ripple of unease among the students. Alien competitors hesitated, whispering among themselves. Some recoiled instinctively, while others tightened their grip on the table, their eyes locked onto the fruit with a mixture of disgust and dread. The humans had been briefed on the serpian fruit's dangers. It could induce paralysis within seconds for most species. But humanity, as always, had an edge. Adaptability. "Don't worry," Sarah said, her voice carrying confidence despite the obvious tension. "We're tougher than we look." John, typically more reserved, eyed the fruit warily, but seeing the determined expressions of his friends, he knew they had no choice. They couldn't show weakness now. Not in front of so many species, not in front of the Academy's brightest minds. With a deep breath, he reached for the fruit. The alien students fell silent as they watched. The Malak instructor's eyes glinted with curiosity. "Humanity, let us see if you live up to your reputation." Took a deep breath before biting into the fruit. The effect was immediate. His body stiffened as the venom coursed through him, his vision blurring, but his face remained calm. Within moments, the toxins seemed to lose their potency, neutralized by the unique enzymes in his body. A strange tingling sensation ran through his veins, but he shrugged it off. "I'm fine," John said, his voice barely faltering. To his surprise, the venom began to dissipate even quicker than he anticipated. He felt the fruit's toxins break down like they were nothing more than a mild irritation. The other alien students, who had been holding their breath in anticipation, blinked in shock as John swallowed the last bite. The instructor nodded approvingly. "Impressive," he muttered, his voice laced with a hint of respect. "You have passed the first test. But this is only the beginning." Mia felt a surge of pride, though she kept her composure. The humans had passed the first test, but something told her this wasn't going to be easy. And as the next dish was brought out, she realized that the true test had only just begun. A plate of Psychon, a pulsating, glowing organism that fed off radiation and emitted dangerous electromagnetic pulses, was placed before the group. Its gelatinous body wriggled in place, releasing faint, shrill hums. The Malak instructor explained, "This creature is known for disrupting the nervous systems of those who consume it. But humanity seems to have a special resilience." Mia exchanged a glance with Sarah. "You're up," she said with a smirk. Her resolve firm, grabbed the plate and inspected the writhing organism. The alien students around her tensed, their eyes wide. They knew the power of the Psychon, and it was not something to be taken lightly. But Sarah, a biology student with a keen interest in the adaptability of various life forms, was undeterred. With a quick motion, Sarah skewered a piece of the creature with a fork and took a bite. The hums grew louder, a sharp, discordant sound that echoed through the hole. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy as the pulses of radiation grew stronger. Sarah's body stiffened, but within seconds her form relaxed as she calmly chewed. The Psychon's pulses were now nothing more than a mild vibration. I swallowed, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "Tastes like fried squid," she said, her voice unwavering. The room went silent. The other students were staring in disbelief as Sarah wiped her mouth and set down her fork. she was the first to finish. Malak instructor's mouth curled upward in what could almost be called a smile. You humans are full of surprises. As the competition continued, the humans stood their ground. Though each alien dish presented more challenges than the last, they never faltered. They faced each new food not just with skill, but with an unwavering determination to prove that Earth species were more than capable of holding their own in the galaxy's toughest contests. And in the process, they began to earn the respect of even the most skeptical of their fellow students. This continuation introduces a series of high-stakes culinary challenges that build the tension and showcase the humans' adaptability. The action is fast-paced and filled with surprises, maintaining a sense of suspense and excitement throughout. The culinary gauntlet had begun, and the humans were quickly becoming the talk of the Academy. Their ability to consume foods that would have incapacitated or killed most other species was nothing short of miraculous. News of their resilience spread like wildfire through the hallways, the buzz of speculation reaching a fever pitch. Alien students began to whisper among themselves, exchanging incredulous glances and murmurs of disbelief. "I don't understand," muttered a starad, a creature resembling a tall, silver-scaled centaur, to his companion. "How can they ingest toxins like that? I barely survived the serpian fruit, and they act like it's a snack." The human students, oblivious to the undercurrents of fear swirling around them, continued with the competition, their bodies seemingly impervious to the dangers of the alien delicacies. John, Sarah, and Mia moved from dish to dish, never slowing down. Each time they consumed another terrifying meal, the alien students grew more baffled, more fascinated. Couldn't help but notice how quiet the crowd had become. What had once been a boisterous affair of prideful species showing off their culinary prowess had turned into a tense, almost uncomfortable silence. The other students, once eager to compete and show off their own strength, had now turned their attention toward the humans. Their stares felt almost predatory. The food was getting progressively more dangerous. A soup made of the larvae of the Thryax beetles, whose bites could cause paralysis in most creatures, a plate of fried Vormith jellyfish, capable of delivering an electric shock that would stop a heart, and a cluster of javro, an acidic fruit that could burn through the toughest materials. But each time the humans bit into one of the dishes, they seemed to shrug off the effects, as if they were unaffected by what would be deadly to most other species. It was Sarah's turn to face the Vormith jellyfish, a dish that had already caused 2 alien students to faint. The slippery, translucent creatures writhed in their balls, crackling with dangerous electricity. Sarah, ever the calm one in the face of danger, picked up her fork and speared a jellyfish. A faint crackle of energy surged up the utensil, and a tremor ran through her arm. But she didn't flinch. She took a deep breath, and in one smooth motion shoved the entire jellyfish into her mouth. The electric current pulsed through her body, her muscles tensing with the shock. For a brief moment, she felt a wave of nausea, the electric energy building inside her like a storm. But then, as quickly as it came, the energy fizzled out. Her body absorbed the shock, and the surge of electricity dissipated into nothing. She swallowed the jellyfish without a second thought, wiping her mouth with a nonchalant flick. The aliens around her stared, utterly stunned. "Did she just?" a Roki student gasped. The luminous beings with their translucent skin seemed to glow brighter as their eyes widened in disbelief. Sarah's lips curled into a satisfied smile. "It's nothing," she said casually. A little zap. Good thing I didn't have to deal with that in the heart. The room was deathly silent for a few moments, until a sudden outburst erupted from a young Malak student. "This is impossible. There's no way these creatures can withstand the toxic properties of these foods. It's unnatural." His voice was a mixture of anger and fear. Felt her stomach drop. For the first time, it hit her. There were serious consequences to their actions. They kept pushing forward, proving how indestructible they were. They could make enemies instead of allies. The Malak students' challenge was only the beginning. There were already murmurs of doubt that would soon turn to hostility. The instructor, a towering figure of power and authority, stepped forward, his claws clicking on the marble floor as he approached Sarah. He stared her down, his insectoid features sharp with suspicion. "Human," he said, his voice laced with a dangerous edge, "you have demonstrated remarkable fortitude, but I cannot ignore the fact that your species seems to be resistant to many of our tests. There's some sort of trick?" Sarah, not one to back down from a challenge, met his gaze. "No tricks," she said, her tone cool. "We're just that good." The Malak's eyes narrowed. "We shall see. You've earned a place in this competition, but remember, the gauntlet is not only a test of survival. It's a test of trust, of understanding. The other species here have worked hard to reach this point, and they did not come here to watch you waltz in and steal the spotlight." The words stung, but Mia stood tall. "We're not here to steal anything. We're here to show you what humanity can do." The instructor remained silent for a moment, studying her carefully. Finally, he stepped back. "We will see. But I warn you, there are those among you who will not be so understanding." He turned sharply, his cloaked body disappearing into the shadows. As the last dish was brought out, a sizzling plate of javro, an alien fruit that could burn through a steel door with its acidic properties, Mia couldn't help but sense the underlying tension in the room. There were those who were watching with admiration, but there were also those who saw the human success as a threat, a challenge to their centuries-old superiority. Mia exchanged a look with John and Sarah. "We've only just begun," she murmured, "and it's clear that we've made some enemies." The Javro fruit was the last test in the gauntlet. It was a final push, the ultimate test of endurance and resilience. As they faced down their final challenge, Mia's heart raced. They had shown they could survive the impossible, but now they would have to prove something far more important, that humanity was more than just its ability to adapt. It was about surviving the fight for respect in a galaxy that was not kind to newcomers. They had proven they could endure, but now they had to prove that they could handle the consequences of their victory. This continuation introduces rising tension and the first signs of alien animosity toward the humans, adding a new layer of stakes to the competition. As the humans prove their resilience, they begin to see that their strength may come with a cost, not just from the food, but from their fellow students. The Javro fruit sat before them, a bubbling, acidic orb that sizzled as if alive. Its translucent skin shimmered like molten glass, and a faint glow pulsed from deep within, its acidic juices crackling against the plate. Despite the intense heat radiating off of it, Sarah reached forward, her fingers steady, yet her eyes narrowed in cautious anticipation. "All right, guys, let's finish this," she said, but her voice betrayed a hint of concern. The fruit had already claimed several competitors, burning their mouths and throats with its corrosive properties. The Academy's safety measures had prevented the worst of it, but the effects were still devastating. Zlon was already eyeing the fruit warily, his mind racing. They'd survived everything up until now, but this was different. The Javro had been specifically designed to be a weapon, a food created by an ancient species to incapacitate foes with a lingering toxic residue. Mia wasn't entirely sure they had the resources to fully counteract it, but she couldn't let herself show fear. "We can do this," she said firmly, trying to reassure her friends. Each of them reached for a piece of the fruit. The moment they bit into it, a sharp burn shot through their mouths. John's throat constricted painfully as the acid ate away at the fruit's flesh. But before the burn could escalate into something worse, the human body adapted once again. The intense sensation dulled, and the acidic juices were neutralized as the human bodies processed the chemicals, converting the toxins into harmless byproducts. Sarah grimaced but swallowed, managing a forced smile. "Nothing we haven't faced before," she said through clenched teeth. Mia followed suit, swallowing her portion with grit. The acid left a sour aftertaste in her mouth, but she forced herself to breathe through the discomfort. Their bodies had been trained to handle stress, but this was something else entirely. As she looked across the room, she noticed the reactions of the alien students. Some were visibly shaking, others fidgeted uncomfortably, and a few kept their eyes locked on the humans, seething with jealousy and disbelief. The Malak instructor who had warned them earlier still stood at the front of the room, observing their every move. His sharp eyes were locked onto the humans, his expression unreadable. But Mia could sense something more behind his gaze, an underlying tension, a kind of resentment that had only grown since the humans started succeeding in the gauntlet. Once the fruit was consumed, the Malak instructor stepped forward with a heavy stride, his claws clicking against the floor in a rhythmic pattern. "The gauntlet is over," he announced, his voice full of authority. "But what we witnessed here today is more than just a competition. It is a declaration." Eel raised an eyebrow, feeling a flicker of unease crawl down her spine. What was he getting at? The instructor's piercing eyes scanned the room, lingering on the humans. "You may have passed every test, but I cannot ignore the possibility that this resilience you possess may be unnatural." He paused, his gaze now fixed firmly on Mia. "You have not earned your place here by traditional means. This is no longer a matter of food and survival. This is a matter of trust." Mia's stomach tightened. "We've proven ourselves," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're not here to cheat." "You misunderstand," the Malak instructor said, his tone cold. "I'm not questioning your actions, but rather your very existence in this academy. It's no coincidence that you humans have shown this strength now. There are those who would believe you are being tested in ways that go beyond the gauntlet." The words struck Maya like a thunderclap. Tested beyond the gauntlet? What did that mean? Who would test us? Asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. The Malak instructor didn't respond immediately, instead looking over his shoulder at the other faculty members, who had gathered at the back of the room, observing the exchange. A murmur rippled through the crowd of students as the tension in the room thickened. Mia felt the weight of their gaze pressing in on her, the eyes of dozens of species watching them, judging them. The instructor cleared his throat. "We are not your enemies, Earthlings, but there are factions within the Academy, factions that view your sudden rise with unease." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Some believe your resistance to the Gauntlet's tests is not natural. They think you are the result of external influence." Mia's mind raced. External influence? What was he talking about? Was he suggesting someone had tampered with their biology, but they hadn't done anything except train hard and adapt to the challenges they faced? They had no idea how to explain this apparent advantage. Malak's eyes hardened. "You are not the first to challenge the status quo. There have been whispers, rumors that Earth has been experimenting, that your species has found a way to manipulate its biology, to alter your very DNA to withstand the impossible." His words were deliberate, pointed. Such an advantage could change the balance of power at this academy, and perhaps even beyond it. Mia's pulse quickened. This was the moment they had been dreading. They had no idea how their extraordinary adaptability would be perceived, but now they were being accused of cheating, of somehow bending the rules of nature itself. And worse, this wasn't just about the Gauntlet anymore. The entire academy was watching, and many were growing suspicious of their rapid success. The tension was palpable. The alien students, once skeptical of the humans, now seemed to regard them with a mixture of fear, anger, and uncertainty. They were no longer just the underdogs. They were the center of a growing storm. "We've done nothing wrong," Mia said, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. "We didn't ask for this. We're here to learn, to prove ourselves the same way any of you have." The Malak instructor regarded her silently for a long moment before nodding once. "We shall see if your actions back up your words. But understand this, human. Your presence here has already begun to stir things up, and not everyone here is willing to accept you." With that, he turned sharply, signaling the end of the Gauntlet. The students, though still unsure of what had just transpired, began to shuffle out of the room, exchanging furtive looks. Mia felt the weight of the room shift. The Gauntlet had been just the beginning. The real test had only just begun. The humans had earned the respect of some, but now they were facing something far more dangerous. A hidden agenda that could tear them apart before they even had a chance to prove themselves. The sun had barely set over Sunspire Academy when Mia, Sarah, and John found themselves in an isolated courtyard, away from the bustling halls and prying eyes. A day's events have left their minds heady, and the feeling of being under constant scrutiny gnawed at them. "We've got to figure out what's going on," Mia said, her voice tight with frustration. The words the Malak instructor had spoken were still ringing in her ears. They weren't just being tested anymore. They were being watched, suspected of something far more dangerous than simply being the best in the Gauntlet. John leaned against a stone pillar, his gaze distant. "We've got no idea what's happening here. All we did was survive. I don't know what else they want from us." Sarah crossed her arms, her brow furrowed. "It doesn't add up. We've been working hard, just like everyone else. We didn't ask for any of this, but the Academy doesn't seem to care about that. They're starting to see us as a threat. Mia nodded. The whole ordeal felt wrong. They were supposed to be here to learn, to prove themselves on equal footing. But now it seemed like their very presence had turned into something more, something far beyond the challenge of culinary endurance. They had become a symbol of something that made the other students uneasy. "We need to keep our heads down," Mia said, though she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. It was clear that the Academy was not going to make this easy. "We've got to stay focused on the tasks ahead, but we can't ignore what's going on." As if on cue, a shadow fell across their conversation. A tall, hooded figure stepped into the courtyard, their presence radiating an almost unnerving calm. The figure was humanoid, but the contours of their face were strange, almost ethereal, with glowing markings etched along the side of their neck. They didn't speak at first, just standing there as if waiting for the humans to acknowledge them. Mia instinctively stepped forward, narrowing her eyes. "Who are you?" The figure tilted their head slightly, their glowing markings flickering with an eerie light. "I am Ilksara," they said, their voice calm and deep, like the sound of wind through a cavern, "and I have been sent to speak with you." Dunn took a step back, sensing something off. "Sent? By who?" Ara gave a slight nod. "I represent a faction within the Academy, one that sees your actions, your progress, as more than just chance. We are aware of your extraordinary resilience, and we wish to offer guidance." Sarah bristled. "Guidance? Are you saying you think we're cheating?" Sapphira's eyes glinted, their expression unreadable. "Not cheating. But there are many here who would question your success. It is not just your survival that concerns them, but the nature of your abilities. You must understand that your very presence here is seen as disruptive. You are different from any species we have encountered." Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about something far deeper. "What do you want from us?" Ara paused, their glowing markings shifting with subtle energy. "The Academy is not merely a place of learning. It is also a political arena, and the events unfolding around you, your sudden rise, have drawn attention from powerful individuals, some of whom may not have your best interests at heart." Clenched his fists. "We're just pawns in some game to you." "No," Ilksara said firmly. "But if you are to succeed here, you must navigate the challenges of both your education and the forces that seek to control it. This is not just about surviving the gauntlet. The survival of your species may depend on much more." Mia stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "So what are you offering us? Some kind of alliance?" Ilsara's lips twitched, though whether it was a smile or something else, Mia couldn't tell. "I am not here to form alliances. I am here to offer you knowledge. Knowledge that may allow you to understand what is truly happening behind the scenes at this Academy. You do not accept my help. You may find yourselves on the receiving end of forces that wish you harm." Sarah glanced at Mia and John, clearly conflicted. "We're not asking for favors. We just want to prove ourselves. We don't need anyone's help." "But you don't understand what you're dealing with," Ilksara replied, their tone becoming more insistent. "You think you've earned your place through your strength alone, but there are those who see you as a threat. There are whispers of experiments, of outside influence on your species. The Academy has its eyes on you, and that is not something you can ignore. Mia's mind raced. Could they really trust this figure? But then again, who else could they turn to? Wasn't as though they could confront the Mulak instructor directly. The suspicion that hung over them had already put them in a precarious position. Ilsara's offer was a gamble, but it might be their only chance to uncover the truth. "What do you want us to do?" Mia asked, her voice steady despite the swirling thoughts in her head. Ilsara's gaze softened, just a fraction. There are ancient records hidden within the Academy. Knowledge that explains the origin of your abilities and how they may have been enhanced. If you can find these records, you will understand what you are truly up against. And if we don't? Sarah asked, her voice cold. If you do not, Ilsara said, their voice firm, the forces at work here will use your strength against you. There are those who want to control the power you possess. If you do not act, you may find yourselves at the mercy of a system that sees you as nothing more than a tool. Mia's eyes narrowed. How do we even find these records? Ara's lips parted slightly, revealing a hint of teeth. That is where the next test begins. With that, the figure turned and started to walk away, their footsteps silent against the stone. Before disappearing into the shadows, Ilsara paused and looked back. Remember, time is not on your side. The figure melted into the darkness. Mia, Sarah, and John stood in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. The gains were no longer just about survival. They were about power, control, and the secrets hidden within the Academy. They didn't act quickly. They could very well be caught in a web of political intrigue that could destroy everything they had worked for. The courtyard was eerily quiet after Ilsara's departure, and the weight of the offer hung in the air like a thick fog. Mia, Sarah, and John exchanged uneasy glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. What did they really know about the Academy? About the forces at play behind the scenes? Were they truly prepared for what they might uncover? Mia's mind raced, filled with questions that had no easy answers. "This doesn't feel right," she muttered under her breath. The gauntlet was just the beginning, wasn't it? John let out a long sigh. "We were naive to think it was. They've been watching us from the start, waiting for us to slip up, to show our hand. Now they're coming for us." Sarah shook her head. "But we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't cheat. We didn't ask for any of this. We just adapted." "And yet," Mia said, her voice steady despite the storm inside, "we're the ones being accused of tampering with our biology, of being something unnatural." "I think Ilsara's right," John said, crossing his arms. "We need to find those records. If there's any truth to what's going on behind the scenes, it's the only way we'll make sense of it. And if we don't, we might just become the next target." I nodded reluctantly. "All right then, let's find these records." With the decision made, the trio set off to explore the darker corners of the Academy. Ilsara had been vague on the details, only giving them cryptic instructions and a promise of knowledge. The records weren't just hidden, they were locked away in some ancient, well-guarded part of the Academy. The fact that the Academy had never mentioned them before only raised their suspicions further. They passed through the grand hallways, the architectural marvels of Sunspire Academy towering over them. The high, vaulted ceilings seemed to echo their footsteps, but the halls themselves were strangely quiet. Most of the other students had retreated to their dormitories or areas of study. As they walked, the hum of distant machinery and the soft glow of bioluminescent plants were the only signs of life. "What exactly are we looking for?" Sarah asked, her voice low. Mia glanced to her friends. "We don't know." Sarah said the records would explain our abilities, but there's a deeper meaning behind it. There's a reason why the Academy's hiding them. And if the rumors about our species are true, then these records might contain some dangerous secrets. "We'll cross that bridge when we get to it," John said. "First, we need to find this place." The deeper they ventured into the Academy, the more they felt the presence of eyes upon them. At every turn, there was a sense of being watched. It was as if the very walls of the Academy had come alive, observing their every move. Mia's unease grew with each step they took. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of wandering through twisting corridors and sealed doors, they reached an unmarked door at the end of a narrow passageway. The walls were thick with dust, untouched for what seemed like centuries. The door itself was old, covered in intricate symbols and faintly glowing lines, and it appeared to have been sealed with something far stronger than just a lock. "This must be it," Sarah said quietly, her fingers hovering over the glowing symbols. "It's definitely not going to be easy to get through." Mia nodded, inspecting the symbols carefully. "It's some kind of ancient encryption. We'll need to decode it to get inside." "I can give it a try," John said, pulling out a small device from his belt, a tool he had used many times back on Earth for decrypting tech. As John began working on the door's encryption, Mia and Sarah kept watch. The silence pressed in on them, broken only by the soft beeping of John's device. Time seemed to stretch, and with each passing second, the pressure grew. They had no idea what would happen if they were caught trying to breach this place, and the nagging feeling that they were being watched intensified. Finally, after several tense minutes, a soft click sounded from the door, signaling that it had been unlocked. John pushed the door open with a quiet grunt, revealing a vast chamber inside. The room was bathed in a dim, ethereal glow that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The walls were covered in shelves filled with ancient tomes, scrolls, and devices, some of them completely unfamiliar to their eyes. "Let's find what we came for," Mia said, stepping inside. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was focused. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. Kitruyo moved deeper into the chamber, carefully examining the contents of the shelves. There were no labels or signs to help them navigate. The books were ancient, written in languages they didn't recognize, and the scrolls were bound with strange materials that seemed to shimmer and hum in the dim light. "Over here," Sarah called out, her voice muffled as she rifled through a stack of scrolls. "I think I found something." Mia and John hurried over to where Sarah was kneeling, staring at a large tome bound in what appeared to be the skin of some creature. The cover was covered in strange symbols, but it was the title that caught their attention, "The Genesis of Humanity." John's eyes widened. "This is it. This is what we're looking for." Mia felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with dread. This book, hidden for so long, held the answers they needed. But what if those answers were more dangerous than they realized? As Sarah carefully opened the tome, the pages revealed diagrams and detailed accounts of human evolution. accounts that seemed to differ drastically from anything they had ever been taught on Earth. There were references to genetic alterations, to experiments involving manipulation of human biology, experiments that had been conducted centuries ago. But the most disturbing part was the mention of an outside influence. An ancient, powerful species had allegedly intervened in humanity's evolution, infusing their biology with unknown abilities. "What the hell is this?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling as she scanned the pages. The implications of what they were reading were staggering. The humans weren't just resilient. They were the product of something far more insidious, something that had been planned long before they had ever arrived at Sunspire Academy. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the doorway. Footsteps. They weren't alone anymore. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, each step echoing ominously through the chamber. Mia's heart raced, adrenaline surging through her veins as she slammed the book shut, eyes darting to the entrance. A shadow moved just beyond the doorframe, and then the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing filled the air. "Someone's coming," Sarah whispered, her voice tight. She quickly shoved the book into her bag, her hands shaking slightly. "We can't get caught here." On's eyes darted around the room, searching for a way to escape. The chamber was tucked deep within the academy, and they had no idea who was on the other side of the door. Their only option was to move quickly, avoid detection, and get out before they were discovered. "We need to hide now," Mia said, her voice low but urgent. She took a step toward the nearest shelf, looking for a place to duck out of sight. She motioned for her friends to follow. But before they could make it, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. It was one of the academy's instructors, a tall, cloaked individual with a shimmering cloak that seemed to ripple with an energy all its own. Mia couldn't make out their face, but there was no mistaking the aura of authority they carried. Their presence filled the room with a quiet, unsettling weight. The figure paused, eyes sweeping over the room with unnerving precision. For a moment, Mia held her breath, praying they wouldn't be spotted. But the instructor didn't immediately react. Instead, they seemed to sense something out of place, their gaze lingering on the shelves, the faint disruption in the air. Pulse raced. The book was the only clue they had, and if they were caught now, everything would be for nothing. "Stay still," John muttered, his voice barely audible. The instructor took a slow, deliberate step forward, their gaze narrowing as they approached the spot where Mia, Sarah, and John stood frozen. It was as if they could sense the human's presence without fully seeing them. Suddenly, the instructor's hand shot out, snatching a scroll from one of the shelves with unnatural speed. It was a small, worn scroll, one Mia had barely noticed in her haste to escape. The instructor unfurled it with a quick motion, their eyes scanning the ancient writing. For a moment, the trio was trapped, their fate hanging in the balance. "Cyrus spies," the instructor muttered, a low growl creeping into their voice. "They'd been here." Felt a chill crawl up her spine. Cyrus spies? Who else knew they had come here? The instructor's words confirmed their worst fears. There were others watching, aware of their every move. And now they were on the edge of being discovered. The instructor turned, as if making up their mind about something. Then, without a word, they replaced the scroll and left the room as quickly as they had entered, leaving nothing but the sound of their retreating footsteps behind. Mia exhaled, her lungs tight from holding her breath. "That was too close," she whispered. John wiped his forehead, his face pale. "What do you think that was about? Ilsara's spies, what does that even mean?" "Someone knows we're here," Mia said, her voice steady despite the tension gnawing at her. "We're not alone in this, and they're clearly watching us." "Not just watching," Sarah added, her voice tight with urgency. "They're trying to stop us." Mia turned to the book once more, her mind racing. What had they uncovered? The records, the experiments, the outside influence. They couldn't just be some random historical data. No, this was something far more significant. Whoever was behind this manipulation of humanity's biology had an agenda, and now they were trying to bury the truth. "We need to keep going," Mia said, determination hardening her tone. "We can't let them stop us. If we can figure out what happened, we might have a way to defend ourselves, to fight back." "But how do we fight something we don't understand?" Sarah asked, a note of desperation creeping into her voice. "We don't even know who's pulling the strings here." "That's why we need the rest of these records," Mia answered. "We have to know everything about the experiments, about our abilities, about the other factions involved in all this. Knowledge is our only weapon now." "But we don't even know if we can trust Ilsara," John said, the skepticism in his voice clear. "They seem to know more than they let on, but are they really on our side?" Paused, considering his words. "We don't have a choice. We have to take this risk. We have to move fast." They continued to scan the chamber, searching for more clues, more answers hidden among the shelves. But with each passing moment, the feeling of being watched intensified. The walls of the academy, once welcoming and full of promise, now seemed to be closing in around them. "I don't like this," Sarah muttered, her eyes darting nervously toward the entrance. "We should leave. Whatever's here, it's too dangerous." Mia said firmly, "We're not backing down now. We've come too far." But even as the words left her mouth, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The game had shifted. What had started as an academic challenge had become a battle for survival, one with far more at stake than they could have imagined. The door to the chamber creaked again. This time, there was no hiding. A door to the chamber creaked open again, sending a cold shiver down Mia's spine. Her instinct screamed for them to run, to disappear into the shadows. But it was too late to retreat. They had come this far. There was no turning back now. The figure standing in the doorway was not the instructor they had seen earlier. Instead, it was a tall humanoid figure, dressed in sleek, dark robes that seemed to shimmer with an ethereal quality. Their face was hidden by a mask, smooth and featureless, reflecting nothing but the dim light of the chamber. For a moment, Mia couldn't decide if it was a person or some kind of machine. The aura of their presence was cold, clinical, unyielding. The figure's voice broke the silence, low and dissonant. "You should not have come here." Instinctively stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The figure didn't move, their posture rigid. "We are the ones who watch. And you are an anomaly." heart skipped a beat. The ones who watch. She had heard whispers of such a group, hidden figures, pulling strings behind the scenes of the academy, shaping its very course. But this was the first time she had encountered them directly. "We're not here to make trouble," Sarah said, her voice firm despite the anxiety gnawing at her. "We're here for the truth. We're not your enemies." The figure's mask shifted, almost imperceptibly. Mia could sense a deep, unsettling quiet emanating from the being, as though they were assessing every word, every breath in the room. "Truth," the figure repeated, as if the concept was foreign to them. "The truth is a luxury for those who do not understand the consequences of their existence." Felt a chill creep through her veins. It was clear now that they were standing at the precipice of something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, though she was afraid of the answer. The figure tilted its head, the motion almost too fluid, too unnatural. "You do not belong here. The experiments that brought you into existence were not meant to create humans like you. You are the result of meddling, a deviation in the course of your species. A mistake." John stepped back, the words stinging his pride. "What are you talking about? We're humans. We're just us. Nothing more." "No." The figure's voice became sharper, colder. "You are more than human. You were altered, your biology reshaped by powers you cannot comprehend. And now you are a threat to the order we have so carefully cultivated." The tension in the room thickened. The revelations were more than Mia could process. They weren't just students. They weren't just a species sent to this academy to prove themselves. They were the result of an experiment, something unnatural, something created by powers far beyond their understanding. Sarah shook her head, disbelieving. "So, what? You think we're just your property? That we should sit here quietly, let you control us?" The figure stepped forward, its movements calculated and deliberate. "You are not our property, but you have become a symbol of the failure to maintain control over an experiment that should never have happened. And that failure has consequences." "What do you want from us?" Mia demanded, refusing to be intimidated. "We want you to stop," the figure said, its voice oddly distant, as though it was speaking from somewhere far away. "The truth you seek is too dangerous for your kind. The information you are gathering about your origins, about your abilities, must be eradicated. You cannot understand it, and you should not. It will only lead to your destruction." Mind was reeling. Was clear now that they weren't just up against a group of powerful students or faculty. They were facing a shadowy cabal that controlled the very foundations of Sunspire Academy. And their mission wasn't to teach, it was to manipulate, to control. "No," Mia said, her voice resolute. "We've already seen the truth. We're not backing down now." The figure remained silent for a moment, then let out a low, cold laugh. "You do not understand. It is not your choice. You will be stopped, and your kind will be extinguished. It is already too late." Suddenly, the walls of the chamber hummed to life, their intricate designs glowing brighter. Mia's eyes darted to the shelves, where the books and scrolls began to shift, rearranging themselves. The figure wasn't alone. It was controlling the very environment around them. The shelves began to move, the chamber itself folding in on itself like some kind of living, breathing entity. "Run!" Sarah yelled, grabbing Mia's arm and pulling her toward the door. John followed, but the ground beneath them seemed to shake. The room was shifting faster now, the walls closing in, and the air grew thick with an oppressive force. The trio dashed toward the exit, but it was too late. The figure raised its hand, and the doors slammed shut with a deafening crash. They were trapped. "Is this really how it ends?" shouted, his voice hoarse with fear. Mia's mind raced. There had to be a way out. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not after everything they had learned. Not after everything they had sacrificed to get here. "Ink, Mia," she whispered to herself. "What's the next move?" In a desperate move, she reached into her bag, pulling out the ancient book. The pages felt warm in her hands, as though the knowledge contained within them was alive, reacting to the rising pressure in the room. Something about the book, about its design, felt like a key to understanding their situation, a key to breaking free. Suddenly, the figure spoke again, their voice cutting through the chaos. "You think you can stop this? You think you can change fate?" Mia, trembling but resolute, held the book high. "We're not giving up. Not now. Not ever." With that, she slammed the book onto the ground, the impact sending a shockwave through the room. The walls froze, the humming noise stopped, and for a moment the world held its breath.